Hey guys, Lynn Marie here, your resident quitting evangelist, coming to you with this week's Quit of the Week. Now, I hope you can hear the lovely trash trucks in the background. I'm bringing you North Park life in all its full glory, but I'm assuming you can still hear me over them. So we're just gonna go with it. All right, I just finished recording an episode of Quit Happens with Drew Manning. Now, my fitness friends out there will know Drew. He is the guy who did Fit to Fat to Fit, which is where he was a trainer and he gained a bunch of weight to understand his clients, and then he lost a bunch of weight to show, to realize like the mindset you have to go through in doing this. But that wasn't why I had him on my show. I had him on my show because Drew has a podcast called Fit to Fat to Fit, and on his 100th episode, he did this really vulnerable share of what he'd gone through in his life with growing up Mormon and having issues with a pornography addiction and having an affair that eventually ended his marriage and leaving the Mormon church. And at the end of it, he just kind of rolled it all up in like he had to learn how to get over shame. And I so resonated with that, and I was so excited when he agreed to come on the show to talk about quitting shame, because I think that is behind a lot of the things that we want to quit, but we might have shame about quitting them, or a lot of the mindsets that we need to quit, mindsets that might be holding us from quitting. By the way, is the video jumping around for you as much as it is for me? That's so weird. Okay, anyway, let's pretend that's not happening. I'll just sit back further. There we go. Okay, so you may be needing to quit a mindset, but that mindset may be in place because of shame. For example, if your mindset is, I'm not enough, or I am not worthy of love, is that because of things in your past that led to shame that therefore spiraled into the I am no longer worthy of love mindset that you now need to quit, or that now is standing in the way of other quits? So I just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about shame, period, and hopefully about some ways that you can combat shame-related feelings. I call this quitting shame, but the likelihood that we as humans can quit all shame that's maybe slightly unrealistic. So let's call this quitting as much shame as possible. And so think about the different things that people are ashamed of. People might be ashamed of the way that they were brought up, or maybe decisions they've made, or things that have happened in their past, or things that are currently happening to them, things they may be experiencing. And think about why a lot of the things that we are quote unquote ashamed of, we are ashamed of them, is generally because we have this feeling that we know isn't true, but we still feel that we're the only person who has ever done this quote unquote bad thing, experienced this, shameful occurrence, and a lot of it is circumstance. If you were brought up, as Drew was, and as I was, in a pretty, let's say, guilt-based religion, then you may have a different perception of what is good and bad. And what Drew and I are talking about today was, at the heart of shame is equating I have done a bad thing with I am therefore a bad person. And that's part of what, to unravel the shame, you have to separate those two things. You can have done a thing, may or may not have been bad. Very few things are inherently bad or good, but that does not mean you are inherently bad or good person. It is just a thing you did. And the person who did that at that time was doing the best that they could. And so that's another thing we're talking about with shame, is ways to release it is to have some empathy with yourself and to have some love for yourself and realize I am not a bad person because I did a bad thing, or because sometimes people have shame because a bad thing happened to them. Sometimes people don't want to talk about being sexual assault victims or sexual assault survivors, or whatever the terminology is, depends on, the perception, and let's try to change the perception. We're survivors, but it still may be a thing that people don't want to talk about much. There may be shame, and they didn't do anything. They were the one something was done to, but there is still shame. So because a bad thing happened to you does not make you a bad person. So that was a lot of what we talked about, was having some forgiveness for yourself if the thing is something you did, or just realizing that those two things are not the same. meaning what you did and who you are. And so I just want to like bring out a bunch of things that people might be ashamed of at this point to just start this like, let's shed sunlight on things, because it's really hard to hold on to your shame when everybody knows about it, and then you realize, oh yeah, many people are also suffering from this exact same thing. There are many people out there who have, let's say, done something in their past they're not so proud of. I mean, if you look back at everybody's, have you stolen something from the local bakery when you were in 3rd grade or something? Like, does everybody have maybe something super minor all the way to maybe significantly less minor that they could, in theory, still be beating themselves up about? Yes. So there's just one realm of things that might be shameful. Another realm of things that might be shameful are like, okay, did you get a divorce, or did you fail at a thing, or something that, society might tell you is shameful. If you're in a religion that doesn't really like divorce, that may feel shameful to you. Or if you are in a hard-hitting society and you tried something and it failed, that might seem shameful to you. We were having this discussion yesterday when I was talking with the Ocean Beach networking group. Nate, who's now president of the group, while he was transitioning from a corporate world to now owning his own gym, he drove for Uber, and he had this feeling of possible shame, like, oh my gosh, what if somebody finds out I'm just driving for Uber in the meantime? And we talked about, how about just telling people you're driving for Uber and explaining that it's essentially funding your entrepreneurial efforts? Then it has a whole different and much less shameful vibe. I mean, think about the ultimate things that people are shameful of. Maybe, sexually transmitted diseases. People are very ashamed of having herpes, though like 90% of the population has it. But why does it keep spreading? Because nobody wants to talk about it, and therefore education doesn't get out, and therefore it keeps spreading because people don't know to protect themselves or how to protect others, all because of shame, because people don't. It's really hard to educate people on things that nobody wants to talk about. Think about, sex ed in the 50s. There wasn't a whole lot that was being discussed, and some of these things might have been shameful back in the day. Thank goodness that society is changing and sunlight is being shed right and left on things that might have been kept in the closet back in the day, people might have been ashamed of, and now it's a matter of exposure, right? When you realize, oh, there are other people like that out there, you can go and be more of yourself. And then when people are exposed to more of yourself, then it's no longer shameful and it becomes more of the norm and more accepted. So if I can try to recap in a very rambly, because it's very hard to focus with the trash trucks, is that shame is essentially when you equate something bad that either happened to you or that you did, or maybe involved with your surroundings, when you equate that bad thing with you being a bad person. And ways to overcome it is to realize you are not alone. In almost any possible thing that you could be ashamed of, you are not the only person that has ever done that, or that it has happened to, or that has that condition. You are not alone. And he was talking about part of his recovery. It was just going to a recovery group and realizing, oh, other normal guys are in this recovery group too. Like, it's no longer this thing that made him feel like a failure. And then that would be kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because once he felt like a failure, there was no reason to stop doing it until he's already a failure, right? See how that builds on itself? So step one of, maybe you have a habit that you're ashamed of. Step one is to stop the shame spiral, because that's going to help you quit the habit, because it's going to make you feel better about yourself. And then you're going to be in a different mind space where stopping that habit, or you may not need to reach for that habit as often as you used to. So again, boils down to self-love and compassion, and just reframing your thoughts and realizing that nothing is either inherently good or inherently bad, and that we all experience a myriad of things all the time. So I hope this has been helpful, and if you need or would like more information of this type, you can go to my YouTube channel. All the quits of the week are there. And until next week, my friends, happy quitting.